Friday. It's mailbag time. My favorite day of the week. Hopefully your favorite day of the week. I mean, I'm sure it is your favorite day of the week as well. Hopefully it's your favorite day of the week because it's the mailbag day. That's why it's my favorite day of the week. I don't know if it necessarily applies for you, but we all have our reasons for liking Fridays, and certainly I think the Morning Pitt Mailbag is one of those. It's why I look forward to Fridays. Plus, it also means we're one day closer to the next game, and this game being a huge game. This game on Saturday when Pitt goes to North Carolina. It's one I'm looking forward to a lot. I feel like I've been saying this all week, how much I'm looking forward to this game. Feel free to throw this back in my face if Pitt gets blown out and loses to North Carolina. Be like, hey, you idiot, why were you looking forward to this? But I think we're all looking forward to this. It's been a week off. Pitt's 4-0. Their offense is humming along. I mean, the team they look good. Not without their holes, but they look pretty good, and it's exciting to see what they're going to be able to do in their first ACC game, playing in a place that they have never won. And we talked about that yesterday. We talked yesterday on the Morning Pit about how much Pitt has not won in Chapel Hill, and given that not very many people the views were down on that video, probably because people looked at it and like, I don't want to relive games that they've lost, understandably so. But, I thought it was an interesting topic and worth talking about. We've got some great questions, though, this week. But before we jump into it, we have to talk about the news that came out yesterday. Pat Narduzzi announced that Rodney Hammond, previously announced as being ineligible for the season, is actually not ineligible for the season. He's been reinstated and will join the team and participate for the remaining 8 games, plus whatever comes in the postseason. Now, we had a mailbag question a couple weeks ago. First of all, who cares about what I said in the past? And we can get to that in a second. Look, this is a big addition for Pitt. This is a big addition. I still think Desmond Reed's the best running back on this team. I think most people would probably agree. Pat Narduzzi even said yesterday that Reed is still the starting running back. But the reality is, when Desmond Reed's not going to take every handoff in every game. Even the best backs don't take every handoff in every game. James Conner still gave up a few carries here and there to Isaac Bennett. It's no matter, Dion Lewis still had Ray Graham. It doesn't necessarily mean you're in a timeshare. You could be the lead back. You could get 75% of the carries. That's a huge volume of carries. And there's still 25% to go to somebody else. And I think in that regard, Rodney Hammond, to me, is a better option than Derek Davis and Daniel Carter. No disrespect to Davis or Carter. I think they're both useful, valuable players. Obviously, Carter had a huge game against Youngstown State with 109 yards on 7 carries, 3 total touchdowns. And that's awesome. But I still think Hammond is a better option. That's just me, is my view. And look, that was the best game of Daniel Carter's career. That's outstanding. I still think Hammond is a better option. And I think as the spell for Desmond Reed, when Desmond Reed takes a series off or is on the sideline for a few plays, I think Rodney Hammond is a great option to have out there. It adds depth to the running back room. It adds more talent, more experience, more proven playmaking ability to bring Rodney Hammond back in. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had a question in the mailbag. The Morning Pitt Mailbag saying, is there any chance Rodney Hammond comes back? And I think I said at that point, there's probably some kind of non-zero chance that somehow he gets reinstated, but for all intents and purposes, no, he's not coming back. I don't know if I used those exact words, but that was the gist of what I said. And somebody on the message board yesterday, when this news came out, said, I think, you were too dismissive of the possibility. And it's true, I was dismissive of the possibility because when I get a press release that says a player is ineligible for the 2024 season, I take that press release to mean he is ineligible for the 2024 season. Not he is ineligible for the 2024 season, but he might be able to come back after 4 games. There were whispers of efforts to try to get Hammond reinstated. But I largely dismissed those because, again, there was a press release saying that a guy is ineligible for the remainder of the 2024 season. I can only take this to mean that going forward, anytime we get an announcement of a suspension and an ineligibility, an injury, or whatever it may be, ruling someone out for the season, we have to leave open the possibility that they might not actually be out for the season. Either way, it doesn't matter. The news, the important news, the relevant news is that Rodney Hammond is back, will be with this team for the next 8 games of the regular season, plus whatever comes after that. And then he'll finish his Pitt career playing for Pitt this year. It's nothing but good news to get Rodney Hammond back on the field. We had to address that right off the bat. Now let's jump into your questions here on the Morning Pitt Mailbag on the Friday edition of the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, great questions this week. Can't wait to dive into it. Of course, you know what we always ask you to do. Like this video and subscribe. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com so you get all of your Pitt sports info and information. Wait, I'm mixing it all up. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com where you get all of your Pitt videos, right? That's where we do all the videos. The Morning Pitt video, our weekly live show on Wednesday nights, and our the post-game show will be live tomorrow night at 8 o'clock to recap Pitt, North Carolina, right here on YouTube. We hope you can join in. It'll be a lot of fun to have you in the conversation. Very much looking forward to that. And if you want to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Turn on your notifications. You'll get an alert sent to your phone whenever you go live, or whenever we go live right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm on autopilot for these like ad reads and promo things. Let's just jump into the question. Zenmeister 1992 starts us off. It says, "Hi, Chris. Love the work you do, and I have a couple questions I'll post here rather than making multiple posts. What can Pitt do to enhance their high school recruiting? It seems like even random programs every now and then luck into a 5-star recruit, but I believe the last one for Pitt was Shane Hale, which was some time ago. Is this potentially something that may be more attainable with sustained success with a hopeful good finish to this season that would make 3 out of 4 very successful seasons? Is there any sort of timeline for the hiring of a new AD? Has there been any scuttlebutt or rumors regarding potential candidates, either interest from the university or AD execs? And then finally, Aaron Donald's on the search committee, executive committee for the AD. Do you see him being more involved with the athletic department in Pitt football moving forward? And what possible capacity do you see it?" All right. So in the recruiting, the last 5-star recruit that Pitt landed for football as a high school recruit, not out of the transfer portal and not as a transfer, but as a high school recruit, was Dorian Johnson in the 2013 recruiting class. Before that was Jonathan Baldwin in the 2008 class. I feel like you're right, like even random programs every now and then luck into a 5-star recruit. I feel like that happens less and less, nowadays. I feel like it's even less prominent than maybe it was 10 years ago, where you might have a chance with a local guy, a school like Missouri or Pitt or whoever can get a 5-star if they're maybe local, they have some ties. It's just not happening very often. Now, maybe if Pitt can sustain success, they'll have a little more, success on the recruiting trail. They had guys like Hakeem Williams interested and seemingly got to the finish line with him. But for the most part, enhancing their high school recruiting success, it's about continuing to win. And I think when you look at the 2021 season and the recruiting class that followed, the 23 class, I think there's some really good prospects in there, some really good recruiting battles they won with some of the guys who were true freshmen last year, Isaiah Neal and Jordan Bass and Kenny Johnson, Shadarian Harrison. These were big recruiting battles. Whatever you want to say about how those kids ended up, Jesse Anderson, I think, was a big recruiting win, and holding on to him was a big success on the recruiting trail. This coming out of the 2022 season, they signed the 2024 recruiting class, the guys who are freshmen right now, Francis Brew and Jasir Whittington, Sincere Edwards. There were some big recruiting wins in there as well. And so I think they've translated some of their on-field success into recruiting success. It may not have produced a 5-star recruit, but I think they've gotten good prospects and won some good recruiting battles over the course of the last couple of years. The biggest key with recruiting success, I think, if you're Pitt, is to keep winning. So that's what they need to do. As far as the athletic director search, not a lot of scuttlebutt. I think they're taking their time. They're being very deliberate about it, going through the process. Nothing much has sort of broken out there as far as candidates. We'll see what develops. And with Aaron Donald, I don't know what kind of role you would look for from Aaron Donald in the athletic department or with the football program. The guy doesn't need it. I think he could find other things to do with his time. I'm not sure what his specialties and, unique talents are of what he could bring. Maybe he's got something I'm unaware of. But the more you can have Aaron Donald around the program, the better. So the longer he's around, the better that is, because it's good to have that kind of guy attached to your program. So, I don't know. I thought it was interesting that he's on the athletic director committee, but certainly adds some star power. S. Bouquet, Rob Goulet, posted this earlier in the week. It got brought into the mailbag. Says, is this the week El Barto gets unleashed? I love how successful the wide receivers have been and don't want to see that change. But when we need an extra gear, are we going to see some of those schemes we heard about to get 86 the ball in space? So what's interesting, and I mean, we've talked a lot about that this week. I talked about it on the Morning Pit a couple of days ago that Gavin Bartholomew needs to step up. Wrote about it yesterday, broke down some numbers on how he's been used and what's been sort of the result there. He's getting targeted. He's on pace for more targets and more receptions than he's ever had at any point in his career. And so it's not a matter of getting him the ball more. I genuinely think he needs to do more with the ball when he gets it. And maybe his routes are not being schemed open the way some of the receiver routes are, but he's lining up out wide and in the slot more than he ever has in his career. You know, his freshman year, he was in the backfield a lot. The last 2 years, he's been mostly in line. This year, he's finding himself in the slot and line up out wide more than any of the previous 3 seasons. So he's running some of those routes. It's just when he's getting the ball, he's not doing a lot after it. He's not really producing much yards after the catch. His average depth of target has dropped considerably from where it was the last 2 seasons. It's closer to where it was when he was a freshman, although it was like under 2 yards when he was a freshman. Right now, it's between 3 and 4 yards average depth of target. But when he was a freshman, he was averaging 10 yards after the catch per reception. This year, he's not averaging that. And so you're not getting the production. Like I said, he's on pace for more targets and more receptions than he's had at any point in his career, but he's not on pace for more receiving yards because he's not making those plays after the catch. He also hasn't scored a touchdown yet, which I'm still sort of surprised by. At some point, I think he will break out. I think he'll finish this season with like 4 receiving touchdowns. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten one yet. Will this be the week when he breaks out? I have no idea. Spenges says, which defensive approach is most conducive to the tight end being open, and what North Carolina is expected to do on defense regarding their front 7 and pass coverages. I mean, I think, it's all about creating matchups. It's all about manipulating the defense. It's all about moving guys where you want them to go. You know what I mean? It's all about understanding of like, if we do this, they're going to do that. And if they do that, then we're going to have an opportunity to do this. I think that's how you have to think about it. I remember one Pitt coach years ago when they were playing against Bobby Petrino coached Louisville, saying after the game, like, it was crazy. The guy had not just his plan, but like you could tell with the way Bobby Petrino called plays and designed plays, like not only did he have his plays set up, but he had plays that were set up to counter what he anticipated Pitt's response to be. Like, he knew what Pitt was going to do and already had it built in to feed off of that. So it's really about, okay, we're going to show you this, and we believe it's going to cause you to do that. And when you do that, we are going to do this, which will take advantage of it, right? So you have to you manipulate the defense into creating those opportunities for yourself. And that means if you want to create the opportunities for the tight end, then you manipulate the defense to open up the opportunities for the tight end. A big concern coming into this game is that Carolina is pretty good at using their tight end. And we've seen Pitt over the years, this Pitt defense be manipulated into creating openings for the tight ends. And so that's something to keep an eye on. We'll see if Cade Bell tries to do the same thing with Gavin Bartholomew. Mr. Manaka says, is there any indication at all regarding the readiness to play for Sean Fitzsimmons? Been looking forward to seeing him play for 2 years. I think he's getting closer. I think he's got a decent chance to play this weekend. I think Pat Narduzzi said it on Monday that he's hopeful they'll get him back soon. I think there's a decent possibility. We'll know when we find out if he flies to Chapel Hill, because if he's not ready to play, they won't take him. They take a smaller roster on the road, and so we'll know when Sean Fitzsimmons, if he's there, he'll probably be playing and contributing. I do think he's closer. I think he's got a good chance to play this week. We'll see what comes, but I'm with you. I think the defensive tackles. Need to produce more, and I think Fitzsimmons has a good chance to be a part of that. Eric Moreland says, hi, Chris. Is there any update on the AD search? Also, do you think the absence of a permanent AD has an effect on recruiting, specifically as it relates to negotiating NIL offers with high-profile recruits that may require something non-standard and out of the ordinary? Great question. So like I said on the AD search, not really much coming out about that yet. I think they're being deliberate. I don't want to say taking their time, but they're not in a rush. The athletic department's operating. They've got an acting athletic director, an interim athletic director, and Jen Toscano. Things are humming right along. The football, you've got all these athletic programs, the 2 soccer programs, the volleyball program, and the football program. They're all doing very well, having success. Not that hiring a new AD or delaying an AD would have any impact on that. But there's no rush to get that hire made. And no, I don't think it has an effect on recruiting. When you talk about with NIL specific impacts and negotiations, like the athletic department is not involved in that. The athletic director is not involved in that. The coaches are not involved in that. Those things, those NIL conversations are happening outside the scope of the official Pitt apparatus. Right, they're happening with the collective, with the Alliance 412 collective and the recruits and their families. That's where that happens. And there may be off the record conversations, I guess you would say, with recruits and coaches about that situation. You know, coaches I think probably get wind of what recruits are being offered by other schools, or kind of what territory you're going to have to be in as far as NIL goes. But ultimately, those the real conversations, the real negotiations, as you called them, are happening between the collective and the recruits and the athletic department, the athletic director, and more often not that the coaches don't really have a role there. They're not really involved. So no, the absence of an athletic director is not, I don't think, having an impact on that at all. I really don't, because they're not really involved in that at all. Previn says, what will be the starting five for basketball with the injury to the Bosnian bub? I mean, like, if it was me, I would probably just try to change those games, like move them later in the schedule. I wouldn't even try to play without Amsal Delalic. No, but look, I don't know if Amsal was going to start anyway. I know I'm obviously driving the hype train on, the Delalic hype train, the Bosnian hype train. I don't know if he was going to start or come off the bench. I mean, I think like when you look at guys who are locked-in starters, right? I would say Jalen Lowe is a locked-in starter. I would say Cam Corrin is a locked-in starter. I'm pretty sure Guillermo Diaz-Graham is going to start. I that ongoing conversation all offseason of whether they would play Guillermo Diaz-Graham as the 4. I think he's going to start. I think your biggest question marks right now for the starting lineup are the 2 and the 3. And you've got a lot of options there. You've got Ishmael Leggett. You've got Damian Dunn. You've got Zach Austin. You've got Amsal Delalic. All these guys, a couple, 3 newcomers, or 2 newcomers and 2 returning guys for 4 guys for 2 spots. And so I go back and forth on Ishmael Leggett. Right? So Ishmael Leggett was the 6th man of the year. Nobody wants to win that twice. Nobody wants to be the 6th man of the year 2 years in a row. And I think a guy like Leggett in particular, and somebody said this to me earlier in the offseason, said, look, he's not trying to be the 6th man of the year 2 years in a row. He's going to fight like crazy to get in that starting lineup. All right? So let's say he gets a spot. Okay? So I think you got a number of ways you could go. I wouldn't be surprised in the least if your starting lineup is Lowe, Leggett, Dunn, Guillermo, and Corrin. Like, I could absolutely see that. I could also see, like, Dunn coming off the bench. Did Damian Dunn transfer to Pitt from Houston to work off the bench? Probably not. Will he accept that role and be a part of the team? I mean, what other option do you have? You're just going to quit? So maybe it comes down to Dunn or Austin. And quite frankly, when Delalic comes back, I don't know if I don't think he jumps right into the starting lineup. It might take time, and maybe he works off the bench all season. Maybe he's the 6th man of the year. It's going to be remarkable when he's the 6th man of the year, the ACC Rookie of the Year, and the first team All-Conference player. Let's get the next question here. Pitt, Missouri says, something I've been curious about, but feel free to skip since it's not really a Pitt-related question. I'm not going to skip it because I really like this question. It says, if there's a tough question that Pat Narduzzi needs to be asked, or really any coach, but especially Narduzzi, do you want to be the one that asks it? Do you help someone else ask it? Or do you draw straws ahead of time with Jerry DePaula and the rest? I'm thinking of things like, why did you kick that field goal at the 1-yard line? Or why is he still the starter at quarterback? Or even, why haven't you made the tournament yet? Or is it just part of the job and not something that registers as uncomfortable from your point of view? So, to the last part, no. I mean, like, there are uncomfortable questions. And like, it's very much, it's part of the job. You try to be a professional. My job is to ask questions. Your job, as a coach, is to answer them or not answer them, whatever. But, like, that's part of it. But I'm still a person. You're still a person. We're humans. And like, why'd you kick that field goal? Like, I'm questioning you, right? I'm questioning your decision. I'm saying, hey, coaches, I think will take it as, oh, you're you're saying you disagree with my decision, and now you're going to call me out for it of why I did that. Even if that's not my intention. But if it's a situation where I don't know why you kicked that field goal, or why you called that timeout, or why you made this sub, or whatever it may be, a relevant point in a game, part of the story of the game, then we're asked that question. But we're still human, and chances are those difficult questions, we're asking them after a loss. So you understand, you do have a little bit of empathy there. You can't avoid that. That's natural, and it's part of just being people, right? And so there is some discomfort there, but there's still questions that you have to ask. That's part of the job. That's what you're here to do, is ask those kinds of questions, or ask questions, not just those kind, but any question. It's, over the last 20 years that I've been doing this, yeah, there are times where I think before a post game, like, so who wants to ask about this? Who wants to ask this question? I think those conversations, it's not all that often that those conversations happen, but I think they probably have happened at some point, probably a couple times over the last 20 years. I can't think of a specific example, but I know it's happened. More often than not, man, you sit down in the press conference and it's like, if you've got a question to ask, you ask it. And if somebody else asks a question that you were going to ask, well, then they ask that question. And maybe you have a follow-up. Maybe the coach says something that makes you think, oh, you know what? Well, what about this? Everybody has to ask the questions that they feel are relevant to the game they just watched. If we're talking about a post-game press conference, or if we're talking about a Monday press conference, you got to ask questions that are relevant to the game that most recently happened, questions that are relevant for the team going forward. And we each have our own perception of the game. We each have our own perception of what's relevant, and so we each ask our own questions. And there's a lot of overlap. I might ask a question, and somebody else is like, yeah, I wanted to ask that too. Somebody else might ask a question, and I might be like, yeah, that's a better way than I was going to put it. I like how they asked that question. Or maybe they asked in such a way that's going to open the door for me to ask a follow-up that sort of, builds off of how I was going to ask the question. So, I mean, you're very much listening. You're paying attention in the press conferences. You're following the lead of other questions. You're taking the lead with your questions. I mean, it's, I think everybody, like I say, I think there's a lot of times where we have overlapping thoughts on a game and sort of have similar reactions or responses, or want to ask similar questions, but it, ultimately, I think you ask whatever question comes to you. And Berg B follows up and says, you can tell when a reporter is asking certain questions that they have a particular article already in mind and just need some quotes for it. Has it ever happened where a media member took the quotes that you garnered with your question and beat you to the punch on your article idea? Or is there an unwritten etiquette among media members not to write someone else's article? Any good stories of media beef over something like this? No good stories of media beef. There are times where you're like, so like the way it used to be, all right, like training camp in particular, okay? Like training camp was a great example. Like back in the day, like Dave Wanstead, probably Todd Graham, Paul Christ, you requested someone to interview, and you pretty much got them to yourself. Somebody else could jump in. They'd be like, hey, do you mind if I ask a question here too? But for the most part, you could get them to yourself, and you could follow your own story. You could pursue your own story, ask your own questions, get your own story, and produce unique content, right? Well, we don't do it that way anymore. We haven't done it that way in a long time. Whoever gets requested, back when we could actually request players, because we don't even request players anymore. We're just given whoever the head coach deems interview worthy that week. But we all get the same person. We all get the same quotes, and we're all working with the same material. And so you'd like to produce unique content, but when we get 4 players and 2 coaches each week, and we all get the same 4 players, and we all get the same 2 coaches, there's only so much you can do with that. There's only so much you can do to try and make something unique out of that. And so you end up with a lot of the same articles. You know what I mean? Like Jim has an article about Cruz Brookins that we ran yesterday. Well, everybody talked to Cruz Brookins, so there are probably other Cruz Brookins articles out there. And that's not, I'm sure everybody can try and find their own unique angle, but it gets really tough to produce something unique content-wise when we're all working off of the same quotes. And so if somebody has a particular angle they're trying to follow, yeah, you pick up on that too. Maybe you try to stay away from that a little bit. But again, we have all the same 5 minute. We all have the same 5 minutes of quotes from a player and 7 minutes of quotes from a coach. There's only so much you can do to try and pursue something unique there. Let me see. All right, this is the last one. I'll take this real quick. Chad Papp says, I'd like to hear your understanding of the Derek Dixon recruitment commitment and where Pitt goes from here. So Derek Dixon was a guard that Pitt had been on for a long time. He ended up committing to North Carolina last week. It was really down to Pitt in North Carolina. Pitt was on him a lot longer, had the stronger relationships, more longer relationships, and Carolina kind of swooped in late and got him. I mean, I think it's an NIL deal. And like Derek Dixon might walk into this room and be like, no, idiot, I did it for this or that. But I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And I think the Pitt staff is okay with that. I mean, like, disappointed because they would like to get good players. But if a player is going to pick another school because of the NIL deal, because it might be $50,000 difference or $100,000 difference, not that that's chump change in any, stretch of the imagination. Not in any respect is that chump change. But if that's what they're going to pick, then okay, go and do that. I think Pitt believes they're selling something a little bit more than just an NIL deal, even though there are NIL deals involved with the players who go to Pitt. I think the Pitt coaches believe they're selling something more than just that. And if the player wants to go for other reasons, then go. More relevant, though, is where Pitt goes from here. And to be honest, I think they've got a couple guys they're still going after, Isaiah Dennis and, of course, Malik Thomas. And maybe, they'll keep an eye out if other recruits emerge late in the process. But for the most part, they've got Omari Witherspoon committed. I think they feel great about him. And if they just end up signing him, I think they're okay with that. There are always going to be transfers at play. They're always going to be working to try and add guys from the portal. But if all they get is one high school guy here and it's Witherspoon, I think they're good with that because I think Witherspoon's really good, and I think the staff is excited about him. So they were disappointed to lose Dixon. I don't necessarily know if they're going to scramble and reach for someone to try to replace him. They'll keep going on Dennis and Thomas. And if they miss on both of those guys, which is probably the most likely outcome, I think they'll be okay with it. And they'll sit with Witherspoon unless somebody, a can't-miss guy emerges late in the process. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens. But, all right, that's a good spot to end it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, so you never miss any of our Pitt video content here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right, that does it for us here today. I hope you've had a great week. Thanks for watching the videos all week. Don't forget, we'll be live tomorrow night at 8 p.m., for the post-game show to talk about Pitt, North Carolina. Can't wait for this game tomorrow at noon in Chapel Hill. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will talk to you tomorrow night. So like and subscribe. Have a great Friday, and we will talk to you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock for the post-game show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.